And we have one more concluding session between you and the Sherry, which is where we're going to hear about what next, also in terms of what could be done at the international level. So we'll hear from Niels Vlaanderen, who's is a key sort of supporter of this Roundtable initiative. As I mentioned, it's a series of events. So every time we try to pick sort of lively and important conversations. I think the last 2 days have demonstrated that this is a very critical one to have had. We'll then hear from Yann Marin, who's the Secretary General of the Network for the Greening the Financial Systems, which represents 150 plus central banks. So it'd be very interesting to hear how this resonates with you and what you think can be done at the level of this community. We'll hear from Mathilde Ménard, our Deputy Environment Director at the OECD, on your own reflection. And then Lucia Rodriguez, who's the member of the Governing Council and Executive Commission of the Bank of Spain, which has been our very generous and host here these 2 days. Thank you very much. Yeah. So, Niels?
So let me first thank Central Bank of Spain and the OECD and all others who contributed to this 2 days event, because I think I was impressed by the program and also what I heard about discussions of yesterday's, because I couldn't attend yesterday, and also of today. So thank you for that. And I'd like to start with one question, that is, who of you attended the first roundtable in 2017 at the OECD in Paris? That's Kate, and I know Sophie was there too, and even so one more. So going back to that time, I look at the agenda, and the focus was at that time how to enable the finance of water projects, more or less. We discussed the gap between the economic case for investment in water security and the financial case. Investments in water security contributes, of course, to the sustainable growth, and lack of investment exposes country to a variety of risks and costs, impacting economic growth. But despite this strong economic case for investment in water security, financing persistently fell short of these global needs. So the focus was on financing projects, and there was a gap, and the discussion was on how to enable these financing, these investments in water. So what happened since? First of all, I think there's a better understanding between the water and finance communities. The water community better understands the diversity of the financial landscape. And in the financial sector, I think there is better understanding of the multiple dimensions of water. Also, the urgency of many water problems rose the last 10 years. Floods, but also droughts, and even the water quality issues are often in our news programs and often discussed. And they have a growing economic and financial impact. And when we look at this roundtable, it is opened with a session as water as a fundamental driver of economic resilience and financial stability. And I don't repeat all the words which are there, but I think so we developed in 10 years. So I think it's also good at some point to look back, but of course also it's good to look forward in the end. And when I look at a Dutch perspective, in the Netherlands we focused on flooding for a long time, because we are quite flood prone in the Netherlands. And we did a lot of economic studies on water and financial initiatives, like the Blue Bond, which was issued a few years ago. But I think for us it's also now important to look more into droughts and water quality issues. They should be assessed more closely, because we now have to look into the financial and economic perspective, because it's a reality which we have to face today and not yesterday or tomorrow. I think it's something of these days. We have real severe water quality issues. We have suffered some drought issues, not like Spain, but still it has an economic consequence. So that's also for us, as a water-rich country, something we have to look into much more. Forward-looking, the upcoming global meetings, including the UN Water Conference, which was mentioned, I think it's still important to have some strong financial messages on water. And at this moment, the dialogue on finance is, I think it's dominated now with the World Bank-led initiative on Water Forward. It gets much attention. It should improve the resilience of 1 billion people by 2030. But there are worries on how to do that in a sustainable way, which also works on the long term. It's important, I think, to broaden the discourse with some results of this roundtable, and to bring the outcome of this roundtable to other relevant international meetings like the CBD and the climate COPs. And let's not forget, also bring our messages, our water managers, to meetings of the financial sector. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. I will try not to be too long. The two topics that I want to start with that are not in my notes, actually. The first one was striking to me when we were discussing during the previous discussion. There is something that is needed and that we should not forget. It is the conviction work that we need to do about this. We can talk about all the next steps, all the things that we would like to have, all the things that we can do as a community, but we have to understand that, I think it's Irene that said so yesterday, when we are in those types of gathering, we are all convinced about the necessity of the work that we are doing. But when we are talking outside of this small community, it's becoming way harder. We need to be vocal, we need to be visible, we need to be very articulated in the way that we are presenting our arguments. We need facts, we need proofs. And all this need to be brought to the table for the policymakers to take them into account, and they need to understand the materiality of the work, of the risks that we are discussing. You know that there are a lot of competing topics in this environment, and it's not easy to get the proper momentum and to have them at the table. In the questions, there were the G20, FSB and GFS mentioned as main sources of the next steps that we wanted. Getting them, well, the NGFS is easy, but getting the others to work on this topic will not be that easy. And that's where I think our communication skills will be put to the test. The second thing that's more a positive and talking to what we mentioned is that yesterday in the US Congress, some of you may have noticed, a congresswoman actually brought jars of water to the table. I would say disgusting brown water. And she was saying that these waters are the ones distributed to the population of Georgia in places, and that the poor quality of it should be taken into account. It was the consequences of the installation of data centers in those environments. But that's also show how much water has the possibility to become an important and visible element in the policies that we want. So thank you indeed for having us. You have heard a lot from the NGFS. There was a lot of presentations and from members, members of the steering committee. I see Najwa, I see Irene. Shrod has also contributed a lot to this work. Elias, of course, the co-chair of the Task Force on Nature. This is showing how much the NGFS is involved in this topic and how much we want to achieve with this. We can all agree that the water is a central topic now at the juncture of climate and broader nature considerations. And it is increasingly recognized as a macro-critical resource. So water shocks, such as floods and droughts, fostering and worsening scarcities, are no longer just environmental concerns, and they can be macroeconomic disruptors, especially when several shocks happen consecutively. So all this needs to be integrated by central banks. That's the ones I'm talking from. Because across central banks and supervisors, there is a growing convergence around this message. Water is a key transmission channel, especially in Europe, but also in other places, through which climate and nature-related risks could materialize, and water degradation could undermine economic resilience, but also financial stability and price stability, which are the core mandate of central banks and supervisors. I won't be very long. I just want to make sure that all the topics that central banks need to take into account are formalized. We need to formalize the materiality. This is an important task. It is essential to prove that those risks are material to financial and price stability, to elevate, of course, the issue to our top priority in the agendas and in the regulatory agendas in particular. We need to set clear supervisory expectations. We mentioned this before, and we need to improve standardization and transparency. I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, the French governor was actually trying to put pressures on his peers, saying that we had an historical responsibility because on this topic we have the possibility to actually avoid fragmentation, and this is a global issue where everyone should be mobilized at the same level and should actually integrate the same types of the regulations to the higher extent. Unfortunately, this proves not to be that easy, even when you are putting the pressure on the topic. So yes, this is something that we should fight for, standardization and transparency. The NGFS may be a strategic message from the NGFS. We want to go from risk to resilience. We want to integrate water into the financial stability frameworks and investment planning. We consider it's no longer optional. It must become a standard pillar of the financial governance. There is clearly a climate-nature nexus there, and the NGFS views water as a critical link between climate and nature agendas, serving as a macro-critical resource essential to global sustainable finance. It's urgent that we have coordinated action, and this goes against what I said about the conviction work. Unfortunately, as Maud mentioned earlier, we don't have the luxury of time, so this needs to be done at the same time. But with the UN Water Conference 2026 coming on the horizon, we must try to collaborate internationally and catalyze those impactful interventions that we have heard over those 2 days and establish resilience transitions pathways. Mobilizing the private sector is also a very important feature. Public action alone is not sufficient. We need the private sector to engage actively, to moving from leading hedge practice, for instance, to the mainstream adoption of resilience investment strategies. Let me just conclude by saying that this roundtable is not to add another risk to an already long list. You know that when we are discussing these topics, even within the NGFS communities, we sometimes have the feedback that, oof, our hands are already full with climate, we don't want any more. I don't think we have a choice in that matter, but unfortunately, this is even in this category of people that are already willing, already engaging on ESG topics, the reaction that we can get. So we need to work on this. We need to understand that water cuts across mandates, sectors, borders, and that they need to be integrated more systematically into financial and macro financial thinking as one of the key ecosystem services for our economies. So the NGFS is very grateful for the OECD in particular for their invitation to co-organize this event. We look forward for the cooperation with this organization. in the coming months on this topic. We have, with the NGFS, some internal work to do to make sure that this is moving forward at the best possible pace. But I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Because you have already listened to me at the beginning, I will try to be short. I would like to thank our host, Banca de España. Thank you for your warm welcome, for having us visiting your premises, and for the leadership that you have shown, in bringing water into the heart of the financial stability conversation. So to Deputy Governor Núñez and to you, Juan Carlos, and your team, our sincere thanks. Also to our co-conveners, CDP and the NGFS, thank you for partnering with us. It's just the beginning in shaping this meeting. And also to the government of the Netherlands and the United Kingdom for their support for this work. Also to GIZ for supporting some of the traveling of some partners here. So thank to all of you, the moderators, the speakers, the rapporteurs, because I think we had an interesting and lively conversation, and we'll try to carry this conversation forward at least until the end of this year for the UN event. I will just mention a couple of things that, for me, will stay in my head from the conversation we had since yesterday, beginning with Kate's slide on climate that is making water, but the landscape that is shaping it. For me, it was very interesting. And then we had a lot of conversation on the centrality of water as a macro-critical issue, financially material, definitely, potentially also systemic. So, as you said, Jan, it's no more optional. We need to advance on it, and we need to coordinate better. So also messages that I got from the discussion, we need to understand better the supply chain effects. We need to, across countries, banks, etc., we need to understand better the correlation across asset classes also. We need not to overlook the transition risks, not to forget also the opportunity side of this discussion with financing adaptation, and a very clear message also, we need to have an integrated systemic approach, looking at different systems. And it was, I think, John who said that yesterday, looking at the scientific climate system, the governance system, the political system, as we know these days that this can become very important, and also the financial system, of course. So all these four systems are complex, but we need to work with all of them. And also a very important message that I got, we need to translate analysis into action. We discussed some challenges, such as capacity building, some puzzles, like the fact that we don't see water anywhere in the trade agreements. We discussed also the need to create markets, like carbon ones for water. We discussed how signals from central banks would be super critical to advance this discussion. And also, I would like to mention what Irene said yesterday for supervisors. Stay the course, go into the weeds. I think it was an excellent message also. I will stop here. Maybe just reminding the latest point on political economy angle. Because if we are here in this kind of messy political situation, it's because we forgot probably too much about this political economy angle. So with that, let me just close by saying what will happen next. We'll take all the recommendations and the insights from these 2 days into a policy report. We'll try to synthesize the key message and set out a roadmap of priorities for embedding water-related risk into financial stability frameworks. And our intention is for this report to land as a credible contribution to the Water International Agenda, including at the UN Water Conference in December. And we would like also with this report to support the ongoing work of you guys, supervisors, central banks, financial institutions, and policy authorities as you move from recognition to action. Oh, I don't say that you have not already acted, sorry, but okay, try to push for more action. So for those of you who are interested in engaging as expert reviewers for this roadmap, this report, this roadmap, we'd be super interested in getting your views. So please reach out to Laila and Sophie. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Laila Davis and Sophie Tremolet for organizing this fantastic event. So voilà, that's for me. Thank you very much again, all of you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to join you for these closing remarks of the 13th Roundtable on Financing Water. As we come to the close of these 2 days, let me begin by expressing my sincere thanks to all participants and speakers, both those of you who have joined us in Madrid and those who have joined us online. The quality, the openness, and the depth of the discussions have truly reflected the relevance of the topic that we set out to address 2 days ago. I would also like to extend our warmest thanks to our partners, the OECD, the NGFS, and the CDP, for an exceptional collaboration. In fact, this roundtable is an excellent example about what can be achieved through both analytical rigor, institutional commitment, and international cooperation. Over the past 2 days, we have heard one very repeated and compelling message, which is water is no longer a background assumption when it comes to economic analysis. Actually, it is rather a macro-critical variable that shapes productivity and has an impact on price dynamics, on fiscal and budgetary outcomes, and on financial stability. And the evidence presented shows that water-related shocks are not isolated events. They are, on the contrary, recurrent, increasingly localized, and often persistent, with effects that propagate through food systems, energy markets, supply chains, and ultimately financial balance sheets. I would like to stress 3 key messages or 3 key takeaways that I think stand out. The first one is, and has been mentioned before, water-related risks are already financially material, even if they manifest differently across sectors and regions. They affect prices that matter for inflation, influence firms' profitability, and hence determine investment decisions, and shape credit risk through collateral channels and concentration. The second one is that the challenge for financial authorities is not so much one of awareness, but rather one of translation. So we have become increasingly better at identifying water stress in physical and also economic terms, but we still lack fully developed and consistent ways to translate that information into the prudential metrics that typically supervisors and financial institutions rely on. And third, and importantly, uncertainty is not a reason for inaction. Central banking and supervision have always operated under imperfect information settings. What matters is applying judgment, proportionality, and a forward-looking approach while avoiding both complacency and premature rigidity. No wonder Spain has featured prominently in these discussions throughout these past 2 days, and not by chance. Our country is a very good example about why integrating water into financial analysis matters. Structural water stress, strong reliance on water-dependent sectors, and also significant regional heterogeneity mean that water management is not only an environmental issue, for sure, but a key determinant of both competitiveness and resilience. Spain reminds us that water, if managed properly, can support economic performance and stability, and on the contrary, if poorly managed, can amplify vulnerabilities. Looking ahead, it's been made clear that this roundtable is not an endpoint, but rather a milestone. There's the understanding that the discussions held here will crystallize in a working paper that aims to offer a robust foundation for further work by central banks, supervisors, and policymakers. But beyond that, we see this effort as a broader contribution to an international conversation. By the end of the year, and this has been mentioned before as well, this work should help inform and shape a constructive and evidence-based debate at the UN Conference on Water. One in which financial authorities should have a clear and legitimate voice as institutions that are in charge of identifying and managing systemic risk. Let me conclude with a final reflection around the point that financial stability in the coming years will depend not only on how well we respond to shocks, but also on how well we anticipate and prepare for structural sources of volatility. Water is certainly a defining example of this new landscape. Integrating it into our analytical and supervisory frameworks is not certainly about expanding our role, but rather fulfilling it responsibly. I thank you once again to all of you for your engagement and your contributions. We look forward to continuing this work together. Thank you. Safe travels.
Thank you very much, and I think with that you all can go and enjoy the sun of Madrid and the cherry of Madrid bars. Thank you very much for your attention. It's been great to have you, and we look forward to hearing from you either through these questionnaires that Kate sent, or feel free to send us emails, suggestions, inputs, etc., to feed into the recommendation paper that will then feed into the UN conference. Thank you very much. Yeah, have a great day.